Hesus Inoma, thank you very much for talking with us today. We think you have an amazing story that will be of interest to people taking this entrepreneurship course. Before we get your impressions of the course, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your thoughts on the role of entrepreneurship in South Africa?
Sure, I'm really excited to be here today to chat to you. I think Africa has a huge potential, and as an African that grew up in Europe, I would say, born in Africa, made in Europe, and that kind of thing. I think there's a huge potential for entrepreneurship, structured entrepreneurship. My journey itself, I left Africa at the age of 2, moved to Portugal, lived in Portugal when I was 16, which is a different experience itself. The economy, let's say, regressed in time, right? And then I moved to Ireland to study, which the economy was growing at that particular point in time in 2001. And then I ended up staying. It has been an incredible journey to see an economy evolve, education evolve, opportunities for entrepreneurs evolve. We're going to talk a bit about the ecosystem here. But just bringing you back even to the university times, well, a lot of you guys will be taking that journey now. I felt that it was structured in a different way. So I landed here in Dublin, right? But I decided to go to Limerick for university. Why? Because I saw the course structure was built for it. You have your academia, right? You're in the course for 2 years. Then they send you for actually call it co-op. So they send you to go work. Go out to the bad boy, the world, bad world, and then, try and do things, right? See how your theory actually applies in real life. But not only that, also they say, okay, there's a year that you can actually go, 6 months or to a year, to explore a different geographical region. They call it Erasmus. People don't know. So I went to Spain for Erasmus, Alcalá de Henares. So I did 6 months there. And then for my co-op, I went to work in underwriting, insurance. You might think it's boring, but for Africa, it's actually fundamental because we need to create new financial instruments. But why I tell that story now is because the way the course was shaped, it shaped me as an individual, how I saw the world. So I came out really prepared to work and to leverage different facets and views of the world that I've gained as well. Right, so that's in a nutshell why I'm really excited about this course, because we can also do that for entrepreneurship. We can shape it in a way that it becomes more experiential, more practical, and less of a fear of people to go in. Because if I fail, you don't fail, you always learn, right? But I'll stop here because I can go forever on this.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you think it's like to be an entrepreneur in South Africa right now? So, what's it like to be a 20-year-old, a 22-year-old going through college, maybe becoming a graduate? You look at the job market and say, I need to become my own employer. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit what you think is going through their minds and what they're facing there? Because that's really what this course is about, preparing them for that really daunting challenge.
Yeah, no, I think Africa, you can look at it as a challenge or you can look at it as an opportunity, right? So, for example, in Europe, we're based here out of Ireland. I think entrepreneurship is more challenging for someone to say, I want to go and take an entrepreneurship path because we're nearly full employment, right? And the people that feel secure in their employment now is changing a bit as well. The dynamics as the tech companies now are streamlining a bit more. But in Africa, the reality is quite different, right? So that's why we really love looking at Africa from an innovation perspective, right? Because there are a lot of problems to solve. You come out of a course like this and say, okay, I know the job market is challenging. I have an education, right? But I could actually use my skills to employ myself, build an income for myself, and potentially build income for others, for my community, right? But what I love about Africa is by trying to do that, you can actually change the dial of the whole continent. If you start looking at that as an opportunity, right? A lot of people that look at an unemployment as what can we do, right? But if you look at it from a point of view, you actually have to be in it to actually change it as an entrepreneur, right? You can really help change society in a positive way.
Could you tell us about the multiple roles that you have here in Dublin and how that gives you a perspective on entrepreneurship and maybe as well about the great potential we see going forward in entrepreneurship?
Sure, Niall. So I wear a couple of hats. I'm really excited about that diversity as well in my current roles. So one of them is the head of strategy and innovation for i13 Ventures. What is i13 Ventures? We're a venture studio, right? A lot of people might not understand what venture studio is. This is a new concept. We believe that you can build ventures, you can build businesses in a systematic way, right? So we have playbooks and processes on how about to go and do that. I've done that for big professional services firms and the big four, and now I'm commoditizing that for startup scale-ups. So we need to really get that out to the people that need it, right? The most in a very effective, affordable way. So i13 Ventures are the professional services arm, right? Where we validate and research the ideas. And then we also have a studio arm, tech studio arm, where the ideas, if they're successful, we help entrepreneurs build it as well in an enterprise manner, right? Because sometimes when you're building things, they might not be scalable, so you cannot commercialize them quite well. And then on the back of that, we have a fund arm where if the idea is vestable, we want to be able to be part of that success. And we build now our academy arm as well to roll out more courses that are more avant-garde, who say that, they deliver by, the operators and, in these different verticals that we're working. The verticals we're working is predominantly financial services, healthcare. We're very big into healthcare, agriculture as well. But really all about open finance and wherever we can actually impact with technology and help develop businesses. Another hat that I wear is one of entrepreneurial residence. We're at Dogpatch Labs as an innovation hub. So I help build special projects that are closer to my heart. So one of them is Africa. So, help them build programs that are very niche, very targeted and contextualized in for African emerging markets. So one of the emerging markets we're also looking at Latin America. And in future, we're looking at UAE is another hat that I wear. And of course, where I mentioned operator, Niall, entrepreneurship gets me going, right? So I like to advise, I like to create these special courses and see them come to light and develop and grow. But I'm a builder, I like building. So every year we look very closely at one idea we believe that has a lot of legs and opportunity for success. And we go and build it, right? So I'm wearing the hat now as well as the CEO of Bob. Bob is a pun on Bob the Builder, actually. So he's as an agent, is a venture building assistant, who helps entrepreneurs navigate their ideas, but also helps incubators structure entrepreneurship, right? And give them time back as well to focus on the critical tasks that they should be doing, which is like fostering the entrepreneur and growing the entrepreneur, right? Instead of doing mundane things like setting up meetings, setting up masterclasses, tracking, reporting. Bob the Builder does all that for the incubator, right? But also helps entrepreneur structure their thoughts, right? One of the pretty cool things we do with Bob the Builder, right? Bob the Venture Assistant is for every, actually, let me put it in a way that is more consumable, right? If you're an incubator and you get a lot of applications, right, your success is actually your downfall, right? So the more applications you get, the more analysis you actually have to do, right? So you actually sometimes say, I don't want more applications, I have enough, right? So with Bob the Builder, we looked at that process. We said, okay, can we actually instantaneously analyze applications and also train this engine to reason around the ventures that are being pitched to the incubator through the programs? So just to give you context and numbers, and now for every 100 applications an incubator gets, right, it will take them at least a week for director or program manager to review. And if they're very good, they have a scorecard and they need to mark all these applications. Right? With Bob the Builder now, we can actually do it in seconds, right? And it reduces biases, takes a lot of the politics also out of the process. So now we're giving the incubator director and also the program manager time to go and do more value-added tasks, right? So we're very, very proud of that. There's been trialed already in Africa. It was actually used in a government program, right, in South Africa. right? And they've been proven to actually find one of the best entrepreneurs in Africa. So we just had Irish Tech Challenge. Just there, we brought 7 entrepreneurs from South Africa into Ireland. They were selected actually using Bob the Builder. Right, so we're very excited about that.
Can you tell us what the big picture is for Bob? Where is Bob going?
Yeah.
What do you see? We were talking earlier about how in this age of AI, the strategy isn't 5 years, it's 24 months, it's 12 months out. What makes sense for you? Where's Bob going to be in the time frame that makes sense for you, Hesus?
Bob is incredibly exciting for me because I've worked in this world of professional services. So for my previous life, I built a practice for that Grant Thornton around fintech, right? So it was about strategy, but also strategy could be operationalized. So I understand the importance of strategy. I've seen successful strategy being implemented, and I went on to work for EY Partner and Pure Strategy House, and all this is very important when you have all the frameworks, you can actually execute quite well. We talked about actually reducing the probability of failure and increase the probability of success. With that comes understanding where to play and how to win, right? Or if you should you even play in the first place? That's a bit of strategy jargon, right? But what Bob the Builder, when I see the world is, I want to put a strategy of the business agent, right, in the pocket of anyone. Right? If you walk into a professional service firm, sometimes it's very hard. They want to help, but cost is they sell in time, right? So sometimes they focus on the higher value clients, right? So particularly in this era of AI now and wanted to unlock untapped potential, my view is how do we get an agent in everyone's pocket they can afford so they can actually unlock their unrealized potential right now with the right frameworks, right context. And then where do we see Bob in 5 years' time? We see Bob in 5 years' time, or even shorter framework, because the area is moving really, really fast. He can actually tell you start the business, because sometimes you have a strategy and the strategy is static. Right? You develop the strategy, fight great, have this paperwork, fantastic. Let's go and execute it, right? But your strategy has to be able to react to the shocks of the market, right? So with Bob, we'll be able to curate information in real time from be it political shocks, just to throw another framework out there, pest analysis, so political, economical, sociological, technological. You don't need to know all this, right? Because as strategists, we need to know all this. Imagine if something happens, right? Let's say we're in Dublin, something happens in Limerick that might affect your business. All of a sudden, Bob will know and ping you. Niall, by the way, do you know this happened? Let's say if you're in healthcare, this might affect your business now. So you have to adjust your sections of business model canvas and talking about the channels, right? So all of a sudden, you have a very proactive assistant, a very proactive strategist in your pocket that acts in real-time information and continuously helps you execute your business plan. That's incredibly powerful. You can realize that. That's our vision for Bob.
So if I understand correctly, within a couple of years, anyone with a smartphone can take it out, talk to Bob, and get a service, a response that is not only very cheap in comparison to getting advisors now, but is equivalent to world-class advice and is there immediately. So today, to get world-class advice, you must have a world-class bank account.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And you must schedule a meeting, you must go in, you must talk to them, you must give them time, you must pay them. And then a few weeks later, or months later, they might come back and have a strategy for you. So the reality that you're hoping to build is that with a much more modest investment financially, you will get the same level of world-class support and feedback immediately. And my next question to you is, what is the main milestones on that road to making that reality? What needs to happen first so that anyone, anywhere can reasonably get out and make that vision a reality?
Yeah, that's why we were really excited, Niall, initially around the large language models area. We're in the agentic process before it became sexy now in 2024, right? We understood the challenges and the technology from an infrastructure perspective, where I mean the back end really at the enterprise to execute yeah, the evolution that needed to be had, but we understood the potential of this technology and what it could actually do. Because you can get a world-class advice, but also we understand that it has to be, a human has to be in the loop, right? Meaning that we don't want to just push out to the advisor or push out the professional services firm. They can now do more work, a service markets they couldn't service in the past as well, right? Due to their time, the price point structure. Because potentially, if you're doing strategy, Bob initially go for the analyst. Maybe can do a lot of that research upfront for you, right? The analyst might struggle because AI is very good at doing systematic things, right? Things that targeted tasks. So great, go and get all these reports at this particular market, the cross-reference it against these numbers. So it can do all that for you in real time. So our main challenge right now as a business is how do we make it more affordable than ChatGPT, right? Because we sit here and we think that $20 is affordable, because yeah, $20 a month is nothing. But we look at emerging markets, which is our main goal. How do we really make it affordable, for emerging markets? And how do we deploy this technology in emerging markets when we assume that everyone has a smartphone, right? But if people don't have a smartphone, how do they can leverage this technology or parts of this technology to go on their journey? From a data perspective, it has been interesting our journey of Bob because we've now been able to contextualize Bob on Africa with limited data sets. So there were some techniques that we applied to gather the data in Africa, to clean the data in Africa, to make sure that as they use in the industry, that Bob doesn't hallucinate that much. Right? There's some techniques, some guardrails that we have also applied. And it's incredibly hard to do that for emerging markets. So once we have done that for emerging markets, to actually bring it now to developed markets is quite easy because we have a lot of structured data. So for example, if I want the data of startups, I can go to CB Insights, I can go to different platforms, gather that data, put it on Bob, contextualize it with Bob, say, Bob, do a competitive analysis of this startup. By the way, I do think that the opportunity is this adjacent market where you compare to those adjacent competitors. So there's a lot of structured information that we actually have to help the actual agent hallucinate less in developed markets. We've cracked the nut of being able to do that for developed markets, which is incredibly exciting.
Great. So if I understand you correctly, you have 3 different milestones to achieve. How to incorporate the advisor into this new dynamic where Bob is in the room and is always on and answering your questions.
I'm gonna touch on that one, and now because technology is already here, but we have to change humans to be able to embrace the technology, right? So the advisor has to be able to operate in this new modus operandi and embrace that AI is not taking over their jobs, right? So that's a human education process. We call it change management as a jargon, that we understand quite well that is a factor. Right? And we're going to go on that journey. We're going on that journey already. But that's incredibly important for us to underestimate the resistance of humans when this technology, surfaces as well, right? So some people will say, "Oh, AI is going to kill my job. It's going to take my job." But no, maybe it's going to augment you. Going to enable you to do more things. So there's the mindset shift, and mindset still shift overnight. So we know that there's a journey to be had there. Sorry. So that contextualizes.
That's a great point. I think a lot of what we're doing here is to not replace jobs, but create technology and things like this course, which fill gaps that it was not feasible to have somebody there delivering that. And so now a advisor can advise in more depth with the same number of clients, can support more clients to a higher standard because Bob or similar agents are there providing that support. So that's a core part of Bob being successful, is figuring out that dynamic of how does the advisor, client, Bob triangle. It sounds like a bit as complicated as a love triangle as you might have. The second thing you identified there was cost. So how can Bob become affordable for as many people as possible? And then the final example you mentioned, or final goal or challenge that you have to overcome, is the limited data in the different contexts you want Bob to be able to operate in. Is that the 3 milestones on the way to that reality, that amazing reality we heard?
It is the immediate one, Niall. And then on the last one, we're actually able to crack it now about having limited data and being able to actually make Bob hallucinate this and actually give a very, very high level of advice in terms of accuracy. We're 98% at times, which we're very, very happy with. But when we're talking about even algorithms like LLMs, there are 3 factors to this, right? One is data, but another one we have to look at is the algorithm itself. And I think the algorithms will evolve, and how those algorithms are managed as well will evolve an awful lot. From our perspective, we will like hard problems, right? So we operate in regulated markets, because how you develop an algorithm in a regulated market is very different how you develop an algorithm in an unregulated market, right? So we've seen the AI Act, for example, evolve. We understand certain things that the AI Act in the EU, some challenges and some opportunities. But then also we look at markets that they don't operate with those constraints and say, okay, how Bob will evolve in all this new plethora of regulation. So that's what I mean is there's some technical but also some regulatory and policy challenges we navigated. It's all new for everyone, so it's incredibly exciting. We don't see it actually as a challenge. We see this is the opportunity to come to the table and share our views. Some people might agree with our views, some people might challenge our views, but it's always good to share and get out other people's perspectives.
Thank you, Hesus. I hope that we can come back and dig into a little bit more detail on that.
Sure.
But I think that's a great introduction for now. And so thank you very much for that.
Appreciate it, now. Great chat.